So basically, my name is Magda, and today I work as a lead designer. And today I would like to touch upon a subject on the developer-designer communication. And as you can see, because it's Warsaw.js, the title is the developer-designer communication, not designer-developer communication. But yeah, anyway. I am wondering, like, are there any I know that we have a lot of developers here, but are there also, like, are you also a designer? Are you a developer? You can write in the on the chat for me, then I will know how much of designers and developers are listening. A few words about me. So if you're wondering why you should listen to me about developer-designer collaboration, I'm a founder of UX Girl Design Studio. So it's basically a UX UI design studio, and where I'm leading design teams. I also design UX UI product design. And apart from that, I'm a computer science graduate, so I coded a bit. I am a hidden Java lover, which will probably give me lots of dislikes because this is JavaScript. Oh, we have a designer here. Hello. Hi. Lelum. And also, I was a front-end developer for quite a long time before I started studying. So you can say that I coded quite a lot, but not really collaborated as a developer, more as a designer with the developers. And about the studio that I work in. Oh, another Java lover, Danya. Hello. I'm so happy now. Another Java lover. Hey, Paulina. Thanks for listening to us. And basically at UX Girl, what we do is we do user experience and user interfaces design. We do user research also. We specialize in complex interfaces, which requires a lot of developer-designer collaboration, I would say. And we also do design workshops with clients. And yeah, so why me? This is something that Piotr already told about me. So I have about 10 years experience in design. This is not including my development experience. So that's just design. And this was really quite hard for me to approximate, but I think I worked with around more than 70 developers, but this is really hard because I try to think of every developer I work with, and I try to count them, and I might not be right about this number. And the last thing that will probably shock you is that I enjoyed working with 70+ developers also. So I enjoyed working with all of the developers that I actually had spent time with. And basically, but then you can see that there is a plus. So I might not be that 100% sure about that. But basically, so what will we talk about today? Today we will talk about developer designer communication, but maybe we shouldn't really start from what we will talk about today, but from what we will not talk about today. that's a bit of a, I hope that that's not that weird. So basically today we will not talk about the differences between developers and designers. You have a whole lot of articles on the web that is about this matter, and we will not be talking about this today. But basically, so now I think going back to what we will talk about today is like how to make it work. So how developers and designers should communicate, should collaborate, so that like everything goes smoothly, and basically how to do it. So this is what we will talk about today, not about the differences that we are from different worlds, different environments, that we speak different languages. This is also something that some developers told me, like, yeah. This is something that we will not touch upon today. So when we think about developer designer communication, we usually think about the setups in which they work in. And I like diagrams very much. So I created a couple of diagrams for you of the setups that I know that I work with, that I know that are there, but probably there are like thousands of other setups that I will not show today. And I am aware of that, but there are a lot of them and they differ according to each company. So basically, the first one I would say is like a triangular setup. You have a designer that has some contact with the developers, and the developers has some contact with the product owner, project manager, and also the project manager, product owner has some contact with the designer. So basically, you could say kind of like a perfect setup. So like this happens. But you can also have a different setup. So you can have a product owner, which is somehow at the top, is very decisive about the whole project. And then you have the designer. So like the designer talks with the product owner. And between the developers and there might be someone called like an analyst. Then it doesn't really require for the product owner to communicate with the developers, since the analyst does it. And also the analyst provides some complex descriptions that the designer doesn't have to do. And this is like a setup very much favored, I think, in the financial world, financial industry. So basically, if you're doing a banking project, you're probably working in that setup. We also have a setup which I would also name like a bridge setup. So you have a designer, you have a product owner that communicates with the designer, and the product owner communicates with the developers. So then you don't really have like a link there. And there is also I would say this is a ultra bridge setup where you have the designer, which talks with the product owner, which then talks with the tech manager, and the tech manager actually talks with the developers. And this is also something that I think happens a lot. And this ultra bridge is really tricky. And I hope you actually don't work in that setup, but this also happens. Okay, and so going next, I created best practices for you, and I divided them into dimensions. So this best practices would be for the best communication of the developer designer. And yeah, we'll go through with them. First thing that I think is very, very important, I was just checking the time, mind that. First thing that is very important is access. And this might be funny for you, and you might be in this perfect setup, but not everyone is in the perfect setup. So it might be that you don't actually have an access to your developers. So you're a designer, you don't have the access to developers, or on the other hand, you are a developer, you don't have an access to your designer. And I hope nobody is in this situation right now, but it could be. And mind you, this has to be fixed immediately. So basically, you have to have a communication. You have to speak with the designers. Like developers have to speak with the designers. Designers have to speak with the developers. And basically, if you are in such a setup and you don't have this link, then it's basically your responsibility now to fix that, since you're listening to my talk. And if you're starting a new project, maybe right now, and there are people talking, and this is a couple of red flags that I would say that should actually turn on this thing in you that you should start minding this business. Is that when for example, project manager says, when you ask for the for example, developers in your designer, and you hear you don't need to speak to the developers, you can speak to me. And that's basically the project manager saying. So this is a red flag, and this shouldn't really happen. Or for example, when the project manager says to you as you're the developer, you should focus on your code and not talk. So this is another one that is really not okay, and this shouldn't be like that. So first thing that is most important on the developer designer communication is access. Actually, if you're a developer to the designer, and if you're the designer to the developer, and without that, we cannot really go further. And going next, like second dimension that I see is meetings. And basically, I'm not really talking about meetings in terms of like writing on Slack or having like emails. Like, this is not a meeting. Like, a meeting is synchronized communication. So you speak to someone, then somebody answers to you, and then you can talk some more. So basically, this is a meeting, and meetings are crucial in the communication between developers and designers. And if I would say like how the meeting should look like an exemplary meeting, I would say that the designer, this might be like not something new for you, but mind you, this happens. Like the designer should show some visuals, and this should be a presentation basically. If you are like showing something and you're a designer, and then you're just like talking about something else that you haven't really designed yet, like this is not really productive. While creating this presentation, I also talked with some of my fellow developers that I'm working with right now. And one of the developers, Peter, said that the best way to communicate is always visual. Meetings with talking and not showing are usually much less productive. So, and hi to Peter, Kuba, and others, and Przemek, because I actually promised that I will tell hi to them. So sorry for that. Okay, and going next. Visual is very much important, and if during the meeting you have this great idea and you're like not on an online meeting but on an offline meeting, you can draw everything, and then it's really easy. You just take a paper, you just take a pen, and you just draw, and not just talk, just like draw. But if you're in an online meeting, then you'll probably have to schedule a next one, draw something, draw a draft, and then get back to the meeting, because like without that, it will not just be as productive. And basically, if we're talking about meetings, we can talk about online and offline meetings, like I just said, and I think both are quite okay. So there is not really much of a difference for designers and developers when like speaking. And also another thing, and then like if you would ask me if there is an advantage for seeing in person, well, of course you can see your faces, but basically for good communication, I think it's not that necessary. And coming also to that and online meetings and like actually turning on the camera. So I recently realized that like during the COVID era, that there are a lot of people that actually like are scared of turning on the camera. So at the beginning, I think, of COVID, I actually told everyone like, turn on your camera, do it now. But then I realized like not everyone likes to do that all the time. So I'm not pushing for that anymore. But the meetings are still productive. So basically, I think you have a similar experience with that. And also another thing about meetings is that when you show something, you have to tell a story. So like storytelling is very important to do from the designer's perspective, because this builds like empathy for the developer. And also the developer should not only know like where to put something, but why, basically. If not, they will probably ask questions, and you can just do it beforehand anyway. But it's good to tell also why you've designed something in such a way, not only that you've designed it and that's it. For the developers, and from what I talked about and had experience with, facts and merits are the most important to hear. So while you're storytelling, remember that facts and merits are something that they live on, like developers live on if you're a designer. And also if you're a developer, like I know that you're waiting for them during the meeting. So yeah, be sure to take that in mind. Oops, sorry, 2 slides. And the third dimension for me is respect. When you're working like developers and designers, they kind of do completely different thing, but they are working very closely. And sometimes this happens that the developer starts to do the designer's work, or the designer starts to do the developer's work for example, I don't know, thinking about how the database should look like. So basically, remember that there is the developer, and she has her work to do, and there is a designer, and they also have their work to do. So we shouldn't really mix that. And if you need some advice or need for the other person to come into your role for a bit, ask for that, but don't go into places that you do not belong. And respect each other's work, because if you respect each other's work, you actually believe that they can do the best work, and vice versa. So this is I think very important. And another dimension for let me check the time. Okay, another dimension is openness, and this is something that a lot of developers, I think, and the designers might be struggling with. It's like the feeling that I am a designer, I am a developer, and we shouldn't really talk openly. I think you should talk openly. You should talk in an open way. So you as a designer, you shouldn't say this must be here, this should be placed here, no other way. Just refrain from using these words, because we are both working and towards the common goal, and there is none of the developers or designers is higher up in the hierarchy, right? There are designers, there are developers. We are both doing work that will result in a great product. So don't put yourself above someone else. Gathering feedback. This is maybe mostly for the designers. When you're doing designs, you have to get feedback, and then you have to rinse and repeat, and another time and another time. Sometimes it just takes just once, and we have finished functionality. So basically, since it could take a long time, then that's also okay. So if it comes that you have to have 10 meetings for this functionality to finish, have these 10 meetings. This feedback is very important, because if you will not do a complete functionality with your documentation, then it will backfire later. So just keep gathering the feedback, and don't be sad if you get some feedback. It's not about being positive or negative. It's just feedback. And the last thing here is sharing your thoughts and apprehensions. So sometimes, even me, when I have some apprehensions, I am not sure that this will look right, or maybe this animation will be okay. And basically, this is when you, as a designer, this is when you reach out to the developer, and vice versa. if you're a developer and like there is some decision to make and it's more designy and you have to ask, just do it. But with respect, of course. But actually, by doing this, all of the questions will be always answered, and the design will be complete. So this is very important. And I think not all designers actually do that. So if you're a developer and you think that your designer like doesn't do that, like you don't feel like they can trust you, probably something is wrong, and you probably have to talk with them a little bit more to break the ice. Another dimension, we just have 2 dimensions left, is the knowledge transfer. So this is something that I kind of started right now. So seeking advice from the other role. If you, for example, you're a designer and you have been working like designing iOS apps for the last, I don't know, 2 years, and you're moving to Android, and like you don't actually like, you're not sure about some Flutter components or any other thing connected with that, then yeah, you of course have to search the web first. But then like if you cannot really find your answer and you know that your developer like is an expert in Flutter, just ask them. So it's you don't have to be afraid of asking like technical questions if you're a designer, and then the other way around also. So asking questions is super productive, is something that gets you to answers very quickly. And it's also something which I already said that that will get you a better connection between you two. And I would also say this is something that in the developer world is, I think, very common, is like lending knowledge, sharing the knowledge. And it's kind of a commodity in the IT world, but I still wanted to point that out, that like this is okay. This should be a commodity. You should lend the knowledge, borrow the knowledge, and do it all the time. Since yeah, you want to do a great product, right? And the whole knowledge transfer will build you a very good trust between the designer developer, and also it will make you like feel like you are going in the same in the same direction. So you're doing that together, and you're not really like listening to the commands of the designer or something, or the other way around. You're doing this together, and you also have some some apprehensions that you can talk about, and this is just normal. And the last dimension of a good developer-designer collaboration is the handoff, or the delivery, like of assets, as you could say. It's not only assets, but also documentation right now. And I also talked with a couple of developers to get to know what is the most important for them. And I hope that you all agree here. And the first one would be that the design should be easy to use. And basically, this doesn't mean that like the coded design should be easy to use. It's more about like the documentation design should be easy to use for the developer, because they are you can kind of think that the developer, if you're a designer, is kind of like your user. Like the documentation that you're preparing is actually for him, her to later like implement. So it has to be easy to use. It has to be comfortable to navigate. It has to be and conclude. And basically, what this means also is that when you're when you're sharing the work, you don't really send like PNGs, PDFs, and then like, or some Photoshop files, and then you're like, yeah, I'm done with. If you're a designer, you're probably, I hope, using tools like Zeppelin, like Figma, like InVision, that actually you as a designer can upload, and then the developer can inspect all the that's very important for the front-end developers, inspect all the dimensions and have it very easy, clear. Probably it's best to just ask a developer beforehand, like, have you worked with tools like that? Maybe even choose the tool that the developer likes the most. But it's not only that. If you want the design to be easy to use, you should also think about how it is presented, like the whole documentation. So if there are processes, make flowcharts, make storyboards, make them in a way that the developers actually like to use that. We at UX Girl work with different developers, and mind you say, some of the developers like their storyboards done in a different way. But we actually try to do that for each of them, the one that they actually prefer the most. I know that I'm over time. I'm trying to sum up. So that's how the designs should be easy to use. And maybe my last tip about this easy to use is that if you're using this like InVision, Figma, or what else, or Zeppelin, there are things like pages, grouping elements, or any like folders. Use it all the time, like use it wisely, because just importing and pasting your designs is one thing, but like actually shuffling them and like sorting them, putting them in a nice way for for example, if you have epics and you work in Jira as a designer, posts probably the folders, the name or the names of the pages should be the epics or of the name of the functionalities. If you're a developer and your designer doesn't do that, ask them to do that. This should be easy for you and not the other way around. And another thing, the designs should be clear and consistent without ambiguous meanings. I think this is really easy. So basically, you should use some design patterns. You should make sure that everything is consistent and the processes are all there. And documentation is complete. Basically, you shouldn't leave any questions unanswered, and that's where this feedback and meetings are from. And last thing that one of the developers told me is that some of their designers actually did modifications and uploaded them to Zeppelin or what else without their knowledge, and this is really frustrating. So if you're a designer, don't ever do that. If you want to modify something after the handoff was made officially, write about it on Slack, write an email, tell your developer, drop a line. You shouldn't really be doing that without their knowledge. So this is a very big no-no. And just to sum up all of the best practices for the developer-designer communication, and I know that I just touched upon this subject. This is a huge subject that we can talk about for hours, and I'm already over time. So if you want to talk a bit more, I will be on the, I can answer your questions, or I will be on the Discord channel to answer your questions if you want to ask something. But I just summed up on one page. This is this moment of screenshots if you want to take one. These are all the best practices that I actually wrote down that should be handful for you. So one more second for the cheat sheet to screenshot. I hope that you did. And summing up, even though user experience might be in the designer job title, everyone in the team constitutes the great UX and eventually creates great product together. And great product can only be created if everyone in the team actually can communicate well. So it's now your decision if you want to create a great product, and I hope you do, don't you? Because I think nothing brings you closer to each other than working towards a common goal. Thank you.